Hey everyone, welcome to Flywheel Pod, your number one source for everything Frax, DeFi, and everything in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, you've come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave, here with Capital K. We're here to help you harness the power of the flywheel. And yesterday we really did harness the power of the flywheel with Taureau, the founder of ZigZag. He is kind of a contradiction in a person. He is one of the most cutting edge developers in all of DeFi. Probably the only dev that knows how to code and build on ZKSync 1.0 and also is building on Cairo. But paradoxically is a Bitcoin maximalist. He only holds Bitcoin. Kiet, what are your thoughts on the interview yesterday?
Yeah, man, I think it was actually one of our most fluid conversation yet. I think you and I are starting to get a hang of this podcasting thing. We definitely dictated the flow. I
Maybe a
loved how
little
we,
bit. Maybe a little
yeah,
bit.
just a little, just a little. I loved how we were able to touch on obviously Zigzag Exchange. Then we drilled deeper into him as a person. That's how we found out that he is a living contradictory between being on the bleeding edge of ETH, but yet his bags are only BTC. And then we took a deep look at the macro outlook as well too. So that was a really well-rounded podcast, I'd say.
Yeah. It was honestly really refreshing to hear something that's, kind of straight away from the standard ETH party line, because we're so used to hearing like ETH is money, ETH is this, ETH is that. But like sometimes we gotta take like a hard look and see like let's be critical of ourselves. Like where do we have our blind spots? And like when you get dogmatic, sometimes you forget like that. Like I know like I'm a Fraxmas through and through, but like I am like super open to like any criticisms and stuff, or at least try to be.
No, and I think it's very critical that for his like personal assets, right? Like his net worth is different from his daily, everyday volatility, which is on ETH
Yeah,
and building on ETH. Like that's very sobering a
exactly.
way to he's so logical. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Very intelligent individual, and we'll get right into the interview. For everyone watching, don't forget to subscribe. We're at almost 650 subscribers on YouTube, and make sure you hit that bell, turn on those notifications, so you know every time we have a podcast on. You can follow us at Flywheel Pod on Twitter, join our Telegram group at Flywheel Pod, and you can follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave 22.
And you can follow me at 0x capital underscore K.
And let's get this interview started. Hey everyone, I'm here with Taureau, the founder of Zigzag, an exchange that's on ZK Rollups and Arbitrum. Taureau, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. And what makes Zigzag different from other exchanges on Rollups and mainnet is it's actually an order book, which is a design you'd only really see in the centralized world. And so, like, Taureau, can you give us like a little bit of your background and how Zigzag started?
Okay, yeah. I used to work on OTC desks. So before I started Zigzag, I was working on a platform that did RFQs, so requests for quote systems for emerging markets, essentially. We would price things in emerging market currencies for crypto. And we were one of the larger liquidity providers for it. I got into Zigzag, the idea when I thought of the idea of, okay, we have this RFQ system, we have all this. What if we tried to decentralize this and start coming up with a system that could work in a little bit more of a DeFi sense and use the expertise I have in building exchange infrastructure and stuff and trying to port it over to DeFi. Um, I saw that there wasn't too many people building actual exchanges on DeFi. They were building, AMMs and things like that. So I thought maybe there was a bit of a market opportunity for something like Zigzag.
Yeah, and when did you start building it? And you were pretty early to ZK and Starknet. Like honestly, the first ones, I think when Zigzag came about, you guys were the only ones, and it's kind of like all the stars aligned, and just everything was perfect, and Zigzag just took off. I feel like everyone just saw it on their timeline.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I started developing the project in October of 2021, and ZKSync 1.0 launched in August of 2021. And when I launched it in November, it just kind of took off. And even to this date, actually, we're the only, because the ZK Sync system is very, what would I say? You can't reuse the code from ZKSync 1.0 anywhere else, which stopped a lot of other people from developing on the platform. And it's a very it's just a system where you have to like build a lot of custom tooling and stuff like that. So we're the only exchange on ZKSync right now. And we're preparing we just launched an Arbitrum as well. So we're trying to like expand out the EVM now.
Nice, nice. And what has been your experience building on ZKSync and Starknet? Because there's like some action there, and like people are always like hyping up ZK rollups, like that's the future, but like the future's here, like you're literally building on it. So like, what has your experience been?
So Starknet is not quite ready.
Okay.
We've tried building on it. It's not quite ready to go. So we've never actually deployed a production thing on it. ZK the 2.0 that's getting hyped up a lot is also still not ready. We haven't even deployed testnet on it. They're saying it'll be ready in 90 days, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
And
How was
haven't-
your
yeah.
how was
Yeah,
your
go ahead.
development experience between Arbitrum and ZK-Sync?
Arbitrum is a typical EVM chain, so it's been very standard. And Arbitrum, the RPC endpoints are excellent. They're some of the fastest endpoints coming out. So I think that's a lot of the incentive for people, like developers at least, to use Arbitrum is when you send a transaction to Arbitrum, it returns in like half a second. ZK-Sync is similar. ZK-Sync 1.0, it's not EVM, but the speeds are so fast. You send a transaction, you get a response back in like half a second or a second. So it's really motivating for like building like an order book or something like that, which requires fast order, response times. That kind of infrastructure is appealing.
Cool, cool. And so what can you give us like a little bit more background on like what you've seen in your users? Like what do you think like made Zigzag blow up so much like out of nowhere? Because you guys didn't really have any marketing. It was all very organic. So can you give like a little bit of background in like your users and like what you think your keys to success were?
Okay. Our users are actually very, very different from who I initially thought we would get. My initial goal was to get professional traders to come over to ZKSync. I thought we would offer really low fees and like latencies and stuff like that. And we try and convince like pros to come in to trade size. What ended up happening instead is that the pros prefer to just trade on the centralized exchanges. And they can afford the high gas fees of the L1. So they don't really want to trade off the security of L1 to come to L2. What we ended up getting was just like thousands of like very small accounts. We don't charge a fee on ZK-Sync because we can't. The infrastructure isn't set up that way. Our spreads are razor thin. We charge like less than 0. At one point we were charging like 0.005% of spread or something like that. And the fees are super cheap. Like right now, the fee's sitting at 10 cents for ZK-Sync. So users that want to trade like $100, $200 at a time, these guys found that our platform is beyond, including centralized exchanges, the best platform for them to trade on. So we've seen a huge influx of users from there. I mean, at the peak, we had 20,000 users a day using our site. We're
Wow.
down right now to closer to maybe like 4,000 or so per day. But I think if you look up the stats, we're still the largest DApp on L2. We're larger than any of the Arbitrum dApps except like some game that has like thousands of users, but I don't know how much value those guys really transact. But in general, we have the most users on L2 still. So that's something I'm pretty proud of, is that we serve more users than almost any other dApp out there, even some of the ones that have like much larger presences than we do.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's trying to save money, honestly. And like it seems like your target audience is people it's kind of like you guys are a decentralized Binance in a way, in the sense that like Binance has people from international and all over the world as their like main customer base. Like it's the same thing with you guys because you guys are just easy to use and cheap. And I think like those are the two most important things, especially when it comes to adoption of DeFi.
Yeah, it's like maybe 2% of our users are from like Europe and America. Mostly it's China, India, Turkey, a couple other spots.
Yeah. So like they figured out ZK Sync like pretty easy. Like I didn't realize like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, these guys are savvy. I mean, it's the savvier end of the it's a very, crypto savvy user. We're not getting like the, the Coinbase user that barely understands what crypto is. We're getting I'm in crypto, I understand it really well. I airdrop hunt a lot, but I don't have a big account, I just trade small amounts. That's the sort of user we get.
Yeah.
That's
What are some
that's
of the
an
yeah.
interesting niche. I was gonna say like I'm looking at all the pairs you guys offer, and it's actually a lot of pairs. And I'm actually very surprised. Like you're gonna
Yeah.
give your users everything. What was your listing strategy, or do you just kind of let the permissionless listing?
We would go on Twitter every few days and we'd be like, hey, what pair do you guys want to see next? And the users would tell us something and we'd list it. That was it. Now we ran that in the cycle for like
Wow.
3 months until the bear market hit. And then everybody just kind of lost interest in trading and we're like, all right, we'll kind of chill out. We delisted like half our coins actually.
Wow.
Well,
We didn't delist them. Yeah. We just stopped offering we stopped offering liquidity on it. Some of our users, so we have 150 market makers on our site, and they're free to offer whatever pairs they want. They don't have to go through us. It's permissionless. So there's a lot of pairs that we don't market make anymore, but that users wanted to see active, and someone just kind of picked it up and started market making.
that's some really good A/B testing right there.
Yeah.
Just, like using Twitter to like the fullest right there. Honestly.
Yeah. Twitter is a powerful tool, man. We couldn't have made Zigzag happen without Twitter. Like
Wow.
it's our primary platform to like get users and stuff.
Can you go into that further? Like, what do you
Yeah.
think like made Twitter so powerful?
You're able to communicate directly with your users. So like in a platform where everyone is already there. With Discord, you need everyone to join your Discord. So there's like a little additional step. And we do a lot of support in Discord and stuff. But when it comes to just like communicating with people, like, what do you want to see? The fastest way is to just go on Twitter and just ask like, hey, put out a poll and be like, what do you guys want to see next? And votes will come in like, hundreds an hour and you can see immediately what your users are trying to get.
Yeah. Honestly, I always thought of Discord as like really as a really great platform to be kind of like a Zendesk in a way, because you just can like easily go to like a sport channel and like they can lead you in this and that. And like if you want to interface with not just like your returning users but new users, Twitter's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, so you said before that you did a lot of market making and OTC desk stuff in centralized finance in crypto before you started Zigzag. What are some of the main differences you see, like being like on an OTC desk and then like running an order book, a decentralized order book?
The biggest difference is in an OTC desk, you're the person that clears the trades. So the desk clears the trades on their own. So when you hit accept on our like RFQ platform, you would instantly get a trade. The trade would go through immediately because you were just trading against us. On a decentralized exchange, once the order gets placed, it then has to clear through the chain. So there's that additional step of like, if you're on L1, that could take up to 30 seconds. If you're on these L2s, it still takes like 2 seconds, and then you have to check the chain to see whether the order accepted or rejected. You're not in complete control of the accepts and the rejects on the chain. So there's a lot of extra logic that goes into that, and it makes the user experience a lot clunkier than a centralized exchange would. So there's trade-offs. You get the decentralization and security as a return, but it's definitely smoother trading on a centralized platform.
Yeah.
Even today.
What is Zigzag doing to make the experience less clunky, if possible?
We added a whole bunch of like our clearing times are really fast. Like on ZKSync, they're like half a second or a second. So you don't really feel it. Like if you're used to using Uniswap and waiting for 20 seconds or whatever, when you're on Zigzag, you almost feel like you're on a DEX on a like a centralized exchange, because those guys take like, a quarter second to get you a response on whether your trade went through or not. If we can do half a second, it's like starting to get close to that level. Our users have been pretty happy with it, I think.
Yeah. And where do you see Zigzag fitting as a money Lego in the wider DeFi stack? I mean, like you guys were on ZKSync before, so you really couldn't fit into anything because nothing else was on ZKSync 1.0. It just wasn't possible. But on Arbitrum, like there's some like real interesting ways that you guys could like possibly fit in with like other protocols. Like where do you see Zigzag fitting in like the whole DeFi stack?
Okay, one thing we've seen is on Arbitrum, our prices are far more accurate than something like Uniswap, because Uniswap, for a repricing to occur on Uniswap, a trade has to occur. For a repricing to occur on Zigzag, a trade doesn't have to occur. Our market makers just have to update their quotes. So we've seen a lot of arbitrage activity between our platform and AMMs. So to keep the AMMs more honest and like keep the prices more accurate on AMMs, you need somewhere to rebalance. You could do it on a centralized exchange, but then you have the problem of you have to keep liquidity available on both the exchange and on the AMM on Arbitrum. But if you do it directly through us, you can rebalance directly within your address itself.
Yeah.
So like if you're running the arbitrage, you don't have to take on, you don't need the additional liquidity of also being on a centralized exchange and stuff. Like the swaps occur on the same platform and you can just rebalance your address really quickly. So we're starting to see traffic like that flow in. For
Yeah.
like larger order sizes.
So what are your thoughts on AMMs, just straight up? Like, where do you think they fit in?
I think they're great. I think they're like the best thing for like illiquid markets, small markets, markets that don't need to reprice very often. Like I think I think an order book will never beat an AMM on a stable swap. So I think Curve has like one of the most like unbeatable moats in crypto. Because you can't beat that pricing, like, because of the way like they get, $1 billion of liquidity on one side within like 2 bips, 3 bips, something like that. Like it doesn't matter. You can have an order book and do that, but it's just not going to give you a ton of advantage. Like the AMM makes more sense in that sense.
You think? Yeah. Do you think it's better than like Uniswap B3 concentrated liquidity?
No, I mean that's great too.
Yeah.
Like any AMM for any stable like pair where the repricing isn't necessary is going to be better than an order book in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Like AMM's good for long-term assets. I mean, yeah, long tail assets. Order book's good for like your blue chips and more popular ones. Kit, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, is Zigzag planning on offering perps and kind of all the other types of instruments as well?
Yeah, we're going to do perps eventually.
Ooh.
Got it. So how do you guys going to compete against, like, say, the likes of GMX or Tracer or Mycelium?
Okay. Yeah, GMX. So I guess I can walk through, what the flaw of GMX is they give you great pricing, but they almost give you too good of pricing. Their entire liquidity pool is available to buy and sell against with no slippage, which sounds kind of insane to me because like if your pool gets up to like $100 million and something like, they're using just a simple Oracle price. So let's say a flash crash occurs. It's not a flash crash, but it's just like, one of those like, really severe days happens where we go down like 12, 15%. Usually as a market maker, what you do at that point is you widen your spreads out. You start offering worse pricing, lower liquidity, just because you don't know where the market's going to go and it's highly volatile. If you're GMX and you're offering, I'm not positive this is how it works, but this is how I understand how it works, is if the price goes down to like, like let's say ETH dips to, today it's at 1527 right now. Let's say it dips to 1460 right now. On a centralized exchange, like if you go on FTX, you'll see this like very like obviously the spreads will blow out and the liquidity will drop. On GMX, you can fill that 100 million right at the bottom, like the Pico bottom. The entire LP pool could just get filled at that price. So it seems to me like in the long run, someone's going to figure that out, or some whale with enough size to actually like trade well. Because the GLP token relies essentially on your traders being like real fools, like getting liquidated repeatedly. Like that's why the GLP token is so lucrative. Is if you look at the P&L of GMX traders, it's just absolutely awful.
Down only.
Yeah.
But yeah, down only.
Down
right.
only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't last in the long run. As you get more sophisticated traders coming to your markets, you're going to get really good traders showing up, and good traders are going to win their trades. So if you have bad pricing mechanisms in the long run, I think you end up getting just wiped out in some kind of tail event where someone goes long, let's say, on a 10% dip, holds it for a 20%, like, rise or something, and then clears the position. The MMs are down, market makers are down. The LP token should be down 20% at that point. In a single day, you could get wiped out like that. So I'm a little skeptical that the GMX model can last for longer sizes. If they cap the sizes, that makes sense to me. Like you could say, okay, no more than 1 million per certain, or no more than maybe 10 million every 2 minutes or something. That could be something where like, you cap the risk that your LPs can take. But the way they're going right now, I'm not entirely, but like if you gave me enough money, I would definitely take a chance at like running the LP book on the GMX. I would try and like take a position that was at least very risky to them. There's no guarantee I'd win, like I'm not a great trader. I'm not going to like, directionally win. Somebody who's better than me might, but I could put the risk on the book immediately. I could be like, hey, go on Twitter and be like, hey, I just took a $50 million long position against the entire GLP like liquidity pool. There's an extreme amount of risk available in the pool right now. I'm going to hold this position for a plus 50 or a minus 50%. So you're either going to make 50% or lose 50%. Is that a risk you want to take in as LP? You might not want to take that risk as an LP, and you might start withdrawing your funds at that point. So something like that. I don't know. Like there's things you could do if you wanted. The point being behind that is that I've been designing a system right now for Zigzag V3 that kind of gets around those issues where you have like we're trying to set up multiple vaults instead of one. So we're trying to have every market maker run their own vault. So there isn't like the weakness of GMX I've seen through their like pricing model is that there's a single team member who runs the keeper. There's a single team member who runs the watcher. And those guys are the price setters for the entire protocol. So you have this. Yeah, and there's not a sophisticated pricing mechanism. They grab the price feeds from a bunch of different exchanges, and they just say, okay, this is like the mid price, and we're going to offer 0.1% off of that as a fee. And our entire book is available at that price. Not a great pricing mechanism. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a system where there's multiple vaults. Every market maker runs their own vault, and market makers kind of compete for liquidity. So users can pick which vault they want to deposit into. So let's say Wintermute, Folkbang, and a couple other guys are running vaults. And you see that Wintermute is doing a great job pricing, and they're not losing a lot of money over the last week. You want to deposit with them instead of with Folkbang. And we're going to let the market makers limit the size they offer at every level. So you can have $100 million vault, but you can only put $2 million up for it, at any specific time.
You can only put $2 million in the vault, or you can only trade against like $2 million again.
So we're going to have it so that they can sign orders. So the market makers can say only $2 million is available at this price. If you want, $4 million of size, we'll just charge you a higher price or something like that.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Or like another market maker could offer more at that price, right? Like that specific vault.
Exactly.
Yeah, then you can have the market makers and their vaults compete.
Then you have price competition, and then you essentially have an order book, which is what's missing. That's the long-term scheme for how I think an on-chain order book is going to work is like that. Not the system we have set up currently with Zigzag, which is good. It's not terrible, but it's like it suffers from the problem that we're the ones doing the order matching in a server. So we have a server that does the order matching right now. I don't think like from a regulatory perspective, that's not going to fly if our volume goes above, a certain amount. So long term, I expect the matching to happen on the front end, not on the back end.
What do you mean, like on the front end? Like, where's?
So these market makers with these vaults would vend quotes with expirations of like 15 seconds or something, and we would display it in some kind of order book format in the front end, and the user would fill the quotes themselves.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Got it.
Okay.
How does is that similar to like Hashflow or like Matcha?
It's actually very similar to Hashflow. I looked up Hashflow and like I wrote the design for this, and then someone pointed me to Hashflow, and I was like, wow, this sounds very similar, but they're closed source, which
they're closed source.
Yeah, I haven't found their code at least.
Wait, that's so weird. That's so like anti like anything built on ethos.
Yeah, these guys, they're a professional firm. I think the guys that came up with this, so they're like more of the closed source guys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other aspects of V3 that are being built?
There's going to be liquidity vaults. It's going to be these market makers, pricing things, and a fully decentralized like front end, back end. The one thing that, we're going to take, there's a router that's going to exist. So you're going to have a router like 0x or something like that. But instead of us running the router, we're going to put the router on Akash network. Yeah.
I remember Akash from like 2017.
Yeah.
What made you choose Akash and not like, what's the difference like Akash and Arweave? No, Arweave is storage. Is Akash like computation, like ICP?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like random dudes running servers, so you can just like, take the router and stick it on like 3 of those servers and be like, okay, it's running in I'll choose, 3 countries that are like less likely to get shut down. That's
Yeah,
probably what I would choose. Yeah.
I like this a lot because I mean, especially with the whole Tornado Cash debacle, like the need to like decentralize all parts of the stack, front end, back end, is now more important than ever because it's like the issue's like here in front of us, and so it's
Mhm.
good that you guys are being proactive in that. Uh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, could you share some, I guess, tidbits about the Zigzag's tokenomics? Are you guys planning on having a token? Part of GMX's appeal and attraction is the fact that they have a token and you can farm the hell out of it. And you know how that game goes.
Right. Yeah, we have a token, it's out. We don't have any tokenomics out for it yet. The reason is we didn't have any fees coming into the platform until lately. Now we're at like $1,000 a day in fees, nothing significant, but
Mhm.
right now the plan is we're doing 0.05% fees. We're just going to take all the fees and do buybacks of Zigzag with it. Kind
Oh,
of like Serum does.
okay.
Um, Later on, if we get time, we might try and do like staking contracts or something like that. Mm,
How do you think you guys compare to Serum? Honest, like, and yeah, how do you guys think you compare to Serum?
Um, they're fully on chain.
Yeah.
They're on Solana, so they have like a huge throughput advantage over us.
Okay.
But the downside is you're using wrapped tokens on Solana, which is very risky because something like Wormhole could get exploited, and then
yeah.
you're looking at large losses from there.
Right. So like Jump's gonna back it again and again.
Yeah,
It's a matter of time.
yeah. They've shown they're
Yeah.
right. They've shown that they're willing to just stop backing something. With Terra, like, oh, okay, no longer backed.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what are some of your experiences as a trader? Like what have you like learned in the past and like what are some things you wish you knew?
Oh, what have I learned in the past? Don't use leverage.
Don't use leverage. Yeah,
Uh,
very important.
yeah. It's okay to be in a cash position. Like not trading is a form of a trade. Having like, long periods of time where you're in a cash position is perfectly fine. And if you're trading well, it's sometimes like that is like, the right way to do things is to just wait for the right trade to come and take it instead of trying to like place a trade on every day or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people think like that. When people think of trading, at least like I know for me when I was like younger, it was just, oh, like I always have to be doing something. I think that was just like my ADHD, just like I need to just keep clicking buttons and trading this and that. But like that's how you lose money. So I like that idea of like being in cash is a trade in itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
I always remind myself, cash is a position. It literally shows up as a line item. It is a position.
Yeah.
So I want to take a step back and learn more about you, T. Um, like what made you have the motivation to start a decentralized central limit order book exchange, and what made you get into crypto? Let's take a step even further back. Like why are
Okay.
you building here?
Yeah.
Okay, going way back. How did I get
Yeah.
into crypto? I read the Bitcoin white paper in like 2013, 2012. I thought it was like the coolest thing I'd ever read. So I always had like the dream of getting into crypto, but it seemed like kind of a non-viable profession for a while. So I was like, all right, I'll go get a real job. I'll come back. I'll see what happens. Uh, at some point, I just got really tired of doing like real jobs, and I was like, screw it. I'm gonna do crypto, even if I'm like, kind of broke for a little bit doing it. So that's how I started. Is like 2016 or so. I got into Ethereum late 2016. Um, and I wrote the first thing I did in crypto was like I learned Solidity and stuff back when like nobody was using Solidity and the language was like really difficult to use.
I
So my
see
first thought was, okay,
that's a trend with you. You like to use things when they're super difficult.
yeah, that's like, if you're a good engineer, that's your advantage. Like if you find a system that's very difficult to use and no one else wants to use it, then you essentially have a monopoly on it. Like we're a monopoly on ZKSync right now. We can do whatever we want. It actually upsets me a little bit that like ZKSync 2.0 is on EVM is like going to be EVM compatible because the competition goes way up. You get all sorts of other people coming in. It kind of excites me that Starknet is in Cairo because that's a huge moat for people to get over. So I'm like, all right, there's another system where we can have an edge and we can go in and kind of try and take over the market again. So maybe that's our strategy, like long term, is to just keep attacking difficult markets. But the first thing I did in Ethereum, when I got into Ethereum, I was like, okay, it's difficult language to use. There's not a lot of applicability to this yet. I don't know what you do with this stuff. Like I built a sports betting platform in like 2017 that 0 users, nobody wanted it. And I was like, all right, screw this. This sucks. But I was like, I learned a lot from it. Actually, I built an on-chain matching platform for that. So I built a fully decentralized order book on Ethereum. And then I realized like gas fees are out of control. Like if you do that, like it was like $1 million gas or something for me to clear an order.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, it's a terrible idea. But I learned enough about Solidity to be like, okay, I'm probably like one of the world's best Solidity devs right now. There should be more Solidity devs. Let me like do educational content. So I wrote a book on Solidity that was like, I don't want to give the name because then it'll, reveal who I am. But I wrote a book on Solidity, and like that was kind of the first thing I did to get into the space. And then from there, I just kind of like, started doing consulting and got into like more crypto stuff from there.
Got it. Like, and did you want to do this because you felt like finance was so open, like TradFi was so opaque, and you wanted to come and have a more permissionless system, or like, what was your motivation for jumping into crypto? It can't be just reading the Bitcoin white paper, and being like, "Yo, this shit's cool."
What is your why?
Yeah.
My why behind crypto? No, I mean, when I got into crypto in 2013, there was no like Binance or anything like
Yeah.
that. It was just the Bitcoin was it. Like, I read the Bitcoin white paper and I truly thought this is like actually a system that could work. To be like outside of the rails, the financial system, built it was kind of idealistic coming in. Yeah, because Binance didn't launch until like 2017, right?
Correct.
2016,
Yeah.
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
17, 18.
Yeah. So for Zigzag, my motivation was like more along the lines of like, oh, okay, all these centralized exchanges have a ton of counterparty risk. They like, like 2017 was like the golden age of like you stick your money on somewhere and like you don't know whether it's going to exist there the next day. Like BitGrail was like,
Cointopia?
Yeah.
yeah,
Hit
whatever it
BTC.
was, right? Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Dude, we got rugged on so many exchanges, and I was like, well, there should be an exchange where there's no counterparty risk. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Rug free. Okay.
Yeah.
Rug free.
Got it.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, because I'm looking at your guys' let's jump back into Zigzag now, and I'm looking at your guys' Discord, and you have like 20,000 plus members in here. Could you walk me through like you said, like, ZKSync is a really far corner of the crypto universe, but you managed to suck in 20,000 members into your Discord. Like, what was your marketing strategy or growth strategy to kind of attract all these folks?
I'll admit, I was not the marketing guy. There's a group of 3 other guys who found the project. Maybe more than that, 4 or 5 guys. They found the project and they're like, hey, we'll do everything except the coding. Just let us handle it. And I was like, all right, here's the Discord, here's the Twitter, go at it. They're just really good at running community stuff. So they ran the number up from, I didn't even have a Discord when they came on. I was on Telegram and I had like 50 users on Telegram. And they're like, let us run the Discord. And they just started doing all kinds of like, community events and things like that.
Wow.
And I guess, ZKSync was just a hot thing at the time and people really took to it.
Yeah.
We didn't spend any money on marketing though. Like essentially our marketing spend was 0. It was all mostly organic. It was just right place at the right time kind of thing.
No marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best
building
form of marketing is like,
Yeah. Building a really good product that people use the old fashioned way.
yeah. That was really what got people on board, is they really liked our product. That now like our sentiment is so much worse. Like the moment we said we weren't doing an airdrop, or that not that we weren't doing an airdrop, but that we weren't going to do an airdrop immediately, our sentiment is like in the gutters. Like if you go through our Twitter account right now, like the responses are just like scammer, Chinese scammer. Like I'm not Chinese. I don't know what you're calling me, a Chinese scammer. Just call me a scammer. I can understand that.
Dude, I know. Sometimes like the sense of entitlement in crypto is crazy. It's like, oh, you're not gonna give me free money? Fuck you.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how to explain to these guys, man. Like this is not like, January anymore. Like when DYDX did their drop, it was like, a 6-figure airdrop or whatever, but that's because the price they came out at was a $16 billion FDV. Our FDV is, if we did an airdrop right now, our FDV would be like 100 million. So you're looking at a difference of, what is that, 160x? Like you'll have 160x less money from the DYDX error bar. So if you got 10K in DYDX, you're going to get like $30 from us. And then you're going to hate us. You're going to be like, oh, these are the guys that gave me $30.
Scammers.
Right. Yeah. Scammers. Fuck these guys. They're useless. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you an airdrop for $30, dude. You're going to be pissed off.
Yep.
It's not going to create any value for my platform. You're going to hate us. Like it's pointless. So I just said, we're pushing the airdrop off. Even if we even do one, we're going to push it off until like the next bull market happens, essentially. There's no point in dropping right now. You're just going to destroy the token price for no reason.
Yeah.
If some dude was like, oh, I need a new motorcycle. I'm like, bro, you're telling me you're going to sell the token. Like, that's what you're telling me right now. I'm not going to give you an airdrop, but you want to sell it. I know you want to dump it. Don't tell me you're going to hold it. So
I want a motorcycle, please.
Yeah. It's like, get out of here.
Can I please dump your tokens? Oh my God. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I think the airdrop season. I mean, there's still airdrops happening. Like you had the Dogechain airdrop recently. You have rumors of the Arbitrum airdrop, like that's imminent. Like I keep on seeing like threads of like, oh, this is how you can get the Arbitrum airdrop here and there. Like, do you think it's still airdrop season for like certain metas?
I'd say the real alpha right now is in teasing an airdrop rather than giving one out. MetaMask is like the king of this, right?
Oh
They've
my
been teasing an airdrop for 2 years and they're just collecting fees. Like they have 1% fees and they just rake in money.
1%? Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, it's nice.
Something like that.
It's a good business.
It's retarded. Yeah. So that's the business model in crypto that's really working right now, is teasing an airdrop, not giving one, and charging fees to make people use your platforms because they think they're going to get an airdrop.
It's like the bait. It's just like you have like this like fish rod and you're just like, come on, here's the airdrop. Just pay the fee.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting users, I want to quickly ask about kind of the other side for Zigzag. Like, how did you get the market makers to come on and participate? How was that process like?
We're the biggest market maker on the platform. So we were offering a ton of liquidity already. Besides that, we had a ton of market makers come on board when there was a way to get passive yield. So we're like, hey, market make this platform, you can get some passive yield. 2, someone put up some fake announcement on some Chinese Telegram channel or something. I think it might have been on like Weibo or something. They put up some post saying like, there's an airdrop if you market make on Zigzag. Not true. Never said that. Nobody
airdrop.
Chinese
we had
scammer.
300 market.
That's the real Chinese scammer right there.
That dude's the real scammer. Yeah. We had 300 market makers the next day.
Wow. 300?
Yeah. 300 market makers the next day. And we were overflowing with liquidity. And we're like, what is going on right now?
Overflowing.
The site wasn't designed to handle 300 market makers. So our server was crashing. And I was like, what's happening? Like, why is this happening? And they're like, oh, some guy said airdrop for Chinese market makers. The best part is these guys don't speak a ton of English. So I could say in English, hey, that's not true. And they don't understand what I'm saying. So whoever that dude is basically controls Chinese communication. He can say whatever he wants.
Have you thought about bringing on a Chinese community person?
We have brought on some Chinese community people.
Okay.
Nice.
I don't know much about it. We try and keep to keep some sort of decentralization to this thing. We really try and separate our dev and our marketing efforts. So I know nothing about the marketing efforts, and I don't even know who the Chinese guys are. I just know they kind of exist. I don't run payroll, for instance, so I don't know what these guys are getting paid or anything like that either. And they don't know much about what's going on the dev side. So we try and keep things everyone does their own thing, and that way, when we start decentralizing, when we get to a point where we're really letting this thing go and nobody's in control anymore, it's not that different from the structure we already have.
Wow, so you guys are already decentralizing in a sense.
Yeah, like I was, talking to the lawyers like last week or whatever, and they're like, yeah, the the money isn't even like I can't send anyone money from the treasury, for instance, but not even the treasury, but like the guys that control the treasury are anon. Like there's a ton of stuff that like we're quite decentralized. Like we don't have a legal entity yet. We're creating one now, just for like just for safety reasons, just in case. But we've gotten this far without an entity, and we could probably keep going without an entity. Like nothing would stop us.
Yeah, I guess like how does Zigzag plan on decentralized in the future? Like, are you guys going to do some sort of DAO? Do you think DAOs are overrated? Like, are you going to do something else that's decentralized but not a DAO? Like, what are you guys thinking?
I think the people overstress maybe the DAO portion of the decentralization. What's more important is the decentralization of your tech and your multi-sig. Like, yeah,
Whoa,
like here's an example of something. Like, like if there's 3 people on your multi-sig, 5 people on your multi-sig. I've seen projects like this, where there's essentially, 1 or 2 guys controlling the multi-sig. But you have like DAO voting. Your DAO voting doesn't mean shit. Like I think the greatest example of this is Convex, where the votes don't actually even end up translating to this guy actually, implementing any of it. There's one guy who kind of controls the votes in some sense. So yeah, like it doesn't matter if you do a DAO if your multi-sig guys decide they don't want to listen to the DAO. So, and if your tech isn't decentralized, if you have a centralized server like we do right now, um, then you're not very decentralized. Like, so you've got to think through all of those things first. And the last thing you do is governance, because ideally there is no governance. Like the ideal, like Bitcoin is the standard for like decentralization, right? Absolutely no governance. No one does anything. Even Ethereum, there's no governance at the base layer, right? Governance is like, I would say, a weakness in your protocol, not a strength in some ways. If you need to have governance, then you've got things that need to be governed, which causes politics, which leads to all kinds of issues. No governance
politics.
is the idea.
Politics
Yeah,
causes friction. Politics causes different contests that might not be the best for the future of the platform. Like politics can often be a distraction. So, I can agree with you there that like the ultimate goal is like ungovernance, and you see like a few protocols like go towards that direction. Like Rye is really championing that. There's probably a few other ones I can't think of them. Um, yeah.
yeah. I think in an ideal world, we would freeze the protocol in like 2 years, and then no one would ever touch it again.
What do you think of Frax governance?
Um, Frax, I don't know. I don't look too much in. They're super active from what I see. Like, there's a ton of people voting in the DAO and stuff. But I think they have the same problem we have. Like, our problem with any governance is that there's 5 of us on the multi-sig. We still have to approve anything. I think theirs is a similar issue. They have like 5 people on the multi-sig or something. I might be wrong. I don't actually know much about Frax governance.
Yeah, I kind of view the snapshot in a way of like kind of the will of the people, and like let's say like honestly, if the multi-sig guys go against the snapshot people for whatever reason, like consistently, like it's just gonna cause complete disarray.
Right.
It's kind of
It's
like
like a
it's like a social contract in a way.
Yeah, it's like there's someone with a dictator who's like brought in by the will of the people,
Yeah.
right? A populist dictator. You want to listen to the people, so you give them some authority to like make decisions, but in the end, you decide whether or not to carry out those decisions. Um, that's how I see like the current governance structure in most of DeFi, almost all of DeFi.
A benevolent dictator.
Yeah, like a gatekeeper. There's a gatekeeper that can decide when does this stop being a democracy and when does this turn into, an oligarchy of sorts.
Yeah, I guess like this comes to like the question of like how do you like prevent corruption? Like or like you're like I think governments or like states or like any type of like entity that has like some governing power faces these problems. Like, how do we prevent ourselves from being corrupted? How do we prevent ourselves from, being taken over by forces that are, not like performing like the best actions for all, but performing actions for themselves. Um, and I think that we'll see. We'll see what happens. Kit, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, as a decentralized exchange, you guys are probably one of the more core infra that needs to decentralize the tech
Decentralized.
stack. Like
Yeah.
like what you said earlier, I really like that, how you feel like governance is almost like a liability, and what's more important is decentralizing your tech stack and making sure that thing can run forever, more than the political side of governance.
Yeah, and I
I
don't
think
think
that's
that's
a fresh
emphasized.
take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's emphasized enough, and only just started getting emphasized because I think it's easy to romanticize like DAOs and governance and participation in people. It's a good way to like get people involved in crypto. It's a good like onboarding, but is do we can ask ourselves, is that like really the best way to onboard people? Do people really want to get involved in governance? Because most of the time, like people don't want to vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. There's, let's say, it's a lot easier to vote in a DAO vote than it is to like think through and like work on the decentralization of the tech stack. Like there's a lot more people qualified to vote in the DAO. So naturally that's what gets talked about, but it's not always the most important thing. And like one thing, like the standard bearers to me of like decentralization and DeFi or Uniswap, the way they do things is like, very well done. And they, the governance ends up Uniswap governance, as far as I can tell, no one passes a vote at all. Like it's designed to almost be ungovernable. You need like, yeah, like something like that's really nice. I think the way they've done things is good.
Ungovernance by commit, basically, in a sense.
Got it. Just for the folks at home, and frankly for myself too, T, could you explain how would one go about decentralizing the tech stack? Could you break it up piece by piece, just so like, folks gets more educated on what that really means?
Sure. Okay. So for us, it would mean you have vaults. You have the ability for any engineer that wants to start creating like, pricing schemes to create their own vaults, and for users to deposit liquidity into those vaults. So ideally we have 10 to 15 vaults at minimum. People are offering different pricing schemes, different coins off of each of these vaults. There's different people contributing to the order book, whatever. And then users are choosing, they're grabbing all these pricing schemes from some kind of swarm of servers. Because the market makers do need some kind of router to like send their quotes through. So ideally there's not just one server, there's like 4 or 5, and they're all, hosted somewhere where they're kind of safe from being taken down. And the front end does, it takes in all these quotes and then it decides what to send up to the chain and then close an order.
Okay, so if I can understand that correctly, you have the vault decentralized, then you have the routing decentralized, and then you have
Yep.
the front end UI also kind of decentralized. Like kind of how Liquidity has it, where there's a bunch of like different front end UIs.
I would say the front end, it's kind of tricky, I guess. Like the .eth .links are kind of nice. Like Tornado Cash right now, the way they're hosted, like the way you access it is tornado cash.eth .link, right?
Hmm.
I think that's like the best system so far for not getting taken down. Some kind of like ENS like hosting scheme.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into what I saw this thread from Doug Colkit of CrocSwap yesterday, and he basically said like there's no way that an order book can be sustainable on a general purpose chain. But it sounds like you disagree with that because there's other ways for like an order book to decentralize, and that's through the stack. Whether it's like
Yeah.
Swarm, can you explain like Swarm servers a little bit more too, and also like I remember we had a conversation the other day about like consensus mechanism. Can you go into that too?
Yeah. So in his thread, this like the one you said, he specifically said what you can't do is an on-chain order book. And on that point, I think he's right.
Okay.
You can do it on Solana because the fees are super low and the throughput is super high. And that's what Serum is. But if you on any of these other, L2s or L1s, I don't think it's feasible because the fees are too high. What he doesn't cover is, can you build an order book at all in a decentralized system? So if it's not on chain, it can still be decentralized, right? You can have some sort of consensus mechanism around the orders that, not even consensus mechanism, just some way of like, it's like a torrent. That's what I would say. Like the way I imagine these swarm of servers or whatever is just like I've mapped out the code in my head of how exactly these servers work. They're like 100 lines of code and they have no dependencies. So it's super easy to spin up a server to use one of these things. That means anyone can, start offering a router. And if there's an incentive to offer the router, like maybe the protocol offers some kind of incentive to run a router.
Yeah, maybe they get like a
Um,
fee or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Maybe they get something like that. Then you could have like, people spinning up routers and stuff like that. And then the front end could choose to connect to multiple routers and start like aggregating quotes. And if you have that, then you have a system where if one router gets taken down, another one just pops up to replace it.
It sounds like
Um,
routers are the equivalent to nodes.
yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
very much like that. Yeah. If you have lots of nodes in the system, like, you only need one, you only need one working node in order for the system to continue running.
Could this like be a
Um,
way that like the ZigZag token could have utility, like as a reward? Like, are you ready to order?
um,
Yeah.
yeah, the ZigZag token is going to be, I mean, instead of having utility, like what it's going to be is it's just going to be all the fees are going to go to the ZigZag token. So that's where I guess the utility of the ZigZag token comes in is it's just a security. It receives all of the fees from the protocol. Yeah, maybe in some ways, yeah, using it as a reward for people to run routers and stuff like that is a good use. That could be a good use of governance. Ideally, though, it's baked into the protocol somehow. Like there is no governance required. You just get, for routing an order, you get some kind of specified fee or something like that.
Got it. Yeah, I like the idea of like routers, like having like this decentralized system of routers. And also like goes back to like what you were saying, like kind of when you got into crypto and Bitcoin in 2013, it sounds like you want to continue this Bitcoin ethos, but into a decentralized exchange as an order book, which I find like really fascinating. You're continuing like, and actually like honestly, kudos to you for like continuing like this tradition, this crypto tradition that was started by Satoshi and like and passed on to Vitalik, and like other people are trying to do it, and like it sounds like you're like definitely on the right path, and like with the ethos, both like from a tech stack and also from like a governance stack, but also you guys care about usability as well, which is something like a lot of protocols often tend to forget. They have to like so make something that people like want to use and come back to, and you don't sacrifice that.
Yeah. I'd say in DeFi, like there's a lot. I'm one of the few people that like my entire crypto holdings is in Bitcoin. I'm still a huge Bitcoin believer. But I
Interesting.
work in DeFi. Yeah. So I think that's something I don't see a lot of at least.
Wait, can you explain that further? Like, why is that your position? Why not hold everything in ETH?
To me, ETH is extremely volatile. There's a weird feedback mechanism in ETH, right? When the price, when the cycle is up, more gas fees get burned. The PE looks better. The tokenomics are better, and the price goes even higher. Like there's a huge reflexive effect on the way up. That same reflexive effect
Right on the way
occurs on the way
down.
down. Gas
Okay.
fees go way down, burns go down, the supply kind of increases in some ways, and it's a very low depth. So I don't really like I have enough of an unstable life, like having myself exposed to Zigzag so much. I don't want to expose the majority of my net worth to something that's extremely volatile like that. What I do is I either move into Bitcoin or I move into dollars, like constantly back and forth. Not constantly, but like once every 3 months or so, I'll take a trade. Like ideally, Bitcoin would be less volatile. I don't want to hold cash. Bitcoin is kind of a, you know, even on that end, it's a little volatile, but at least I feel good about leaving my money in Bitcoin. Like I feel like, I'm not going to hit too many swings on the way in and out.
Have you been,
Um,
yeah, have you been keeping track of the Bitcoin community and what's been going on there? Because I really don't know too much. I just see like Bitcoin maximalists scream on Twitter, but I know that isn't all of Bitcoin. So like what?
it's
Yeah,
it's completely pointless. Like the whole point of Bitcoin right now is that we're not going to change the code anymore. It's just going to be like that, like almost forever, right? Like Taproot. I don't think anybody uses Taproot. I don't think anybody cared about Taproot. The whole idea is you just sit there and you like hold your money for the next 100 years. Okay. The problem is when you sit there and you hold your money for the next 100 years, you have nothing to do. Like you're sitting there, you know, your thesis is already made for the rest of your life in some ways. Like, I'm going to hold Bitcoin. Like, Sailor's thing is, I'm going to hold Bitcoin. Okay. What's there to say about that? There's nothing to say about that beyond a certain point. So you
Yeah.
just end up with this, like, community of people just kind of like getting bored and like getting, into arguments for no reason. Like, that's the way I see Bitcoin Maxi. There's no point in engaging with them. Their entire philosophy is very, like, it's done. Like,
It's done.
exactly. Yeah, it's done. There's nothing left to do in Bitcoin. So what do? You just sit there and argue about stuff. All right. Yeah, fucking don't bother with them. Like, go do something else.
So
Yeah. I don't think they're wrong yet.
Yeah. No, it's like it's a respectable position just to be only in Bitcoin. And that's it. Like, I agree. But like I also agree, like, but that's it. There's nothing else to go or explain from there or argue from there. But like, do you know what else is going on like within, I guess, like, so in terms of like Bitcoin development, there's like nothing going on. Like, like, what about maintaining the code? Like, what about just like like in the same way that like with the internet, you have all these different protocols, like, HTTPS and like what the whole like internet service provider stack, like people are like maintaining all that. Like, is that happening with Bitcoin too? Like, do you know how that's happening at all?
With these servers and things like that, with like the underlying infrastructure, there's physical wear and tear, so you have to maintain physical infrastructure, and the code kind of does get updated every once in a while at these core levels. And servers, a lot of it is just like keeping servers running. Things like physical infrastructure deteriorates. Bitcoin, there's no physical infrastructure except for the miners, so the miners need to get maintained. But that's mining companies; they're doing their own thing.
Mhm.
They're rarely getting into Bitcoin Maxi days because they have work to do. They're
They
too
have
busy
work
to
to
sit
do.
there and argue.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to sit there and argue on the internet. But in terms of the Bitcoin core protocol itself, it's like almost like a victim of its own success, where it's so well designed, and it maintains itself so well because of like the incentive to run a node, the the kind of, you can't take down the network itself because there's so many different copies of the blockchain and stuff, and the code is kind of at a point where no one wants to update it. I don't think there's a ton of maintenance that goes into it. I think everything just kind of happens naturally. It's just a very well designed
No.
system in that way.
Do you think Bitcoin maximalists are actually hurtful to Bitcoin? Like, people are just like, oh, I don't want we even want to be like around it, or like even take part or hold Bitcoin because of like the community around it.
I think Bitcoin maxis are a net positive to the crypto ecosystem for one reason, and that's they're the buyer of last resort. Like, if crypto goes to absolute shit, Bitcoin maxis are the buyer of last resort. So
Good point.
in order to, the problem is 99% of the time they're just sitting there like talking a lot and no one wants to listen to them. But that 1% of time, like, the price is going down to 3,000 and we're like, oh no, is crypto going to survive? Those are the guys that are like, oh, I'm going to DCA a little bit into Bitcoin right now. And we're like, great. They're like the marginal buyer of last resort. So we need those guys. We just have to suffer through them for the rest of the time.
For the rest of eternity, we must suffer. It's honestly, the trade-off is worth it. Like, it's like two extremes. One is like you have to be annoyed as hell with them, but also like when crypto's like in the absolute gutter of the most gutter of the gutter, like they're the ones that are gonna like be fighting in the trenches.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think Bitcoin will move to proof of stake, or do you think it will just be proof of work?
No, I think no one will ever pass. Like, no, I don't think any code will get added to Bitcoin like anytime
Yeah.
soon. Definitely not proof of stake.
Personally, for me, I think it should say proof of work. I think there's something
Yeah.
very elegant of turning pure energy into currency. Like that,
Yeah.
and that's what like currency. That's what money is. Money is just potential energy.
Right.
Okay, were you gonna ask something?
Yeah, I'm really impressed by how T keeps his net worth in Bitcoin, but yet he is building literally on the bleeding edge of like ETH tech.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
the most bleed. You would think that like he would just have like a bunch of ETH and like have his network
Right.
in ETH, but like you never hear anyone like take a step back and explain like why they don't. It's like, oh, like ETH is like super reflexive, and honestly, ETH is super reflexive because it's more of a commodity like oil. It's literally so, and we all see how volatile oil can be.
It's the opposite of oil.
Oh, it's the opposite of oil.
Well, think about it. Oil has
I'm thinking,
it's
I'm thinking of like fuel.
anti-reflect-
I'm thinking of like fuel. Like it's like, and you need like gas to spend. So that's why I said oil.
Okay, you're thinking about it the opposite way then. Okay, so when oil prices go high, more oil output gets turned up, right? there's a mechanism designed for oil prices to come back down because demand goes down and supply goes up when the price goes up of oil. You know, for commodities, they say the answer to high prices is high prices, right? And the same thing on the lower end. When oil prices come down, then rigs come offline, supply comes down, demand goes up because all of a sudden oil is really cheap, and there's a balancing mechanism to bring the price back up. ETH is the opposite of that. So you take the volatility of oil and then you make it reflexive. So it's like when the price goes up, there's like more ETH gets used more when the price goes up. It's not like, demand goes up. It's like, there's no explanation for it. It just is. Like, more ETH gets burned. The supply gets constrained even further when the price goes up. And then on the way down, the supply opens up. So even more and more ETH becomes available because there's less and less of it being burned. So it's like the opposite of a commodity, where like a commodity has a price balancing mechanism and ETH has like a price anti-stability mechanism built into it.
Wait, I'm trying to understand that again. I kind of just floated off. So like ETH is like the opposite of commodities because like instead of it going like, oh, the higher it goes, like demand goes down, like the higher it goes, demand goes higher. And when like the lower it goes, demand goes like even lower. Is that what you're saying?
I would say, yeah, I think the demand side is the wrong way to look at it. I should have said that. Like the supply goes up. The supply goes down as the price goes up, and the supply goes up as the price goes down.
Oh, okay. So it's like the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa. So what do you think of like ETH 1559?
I mean, I think it was good for the protocol because it gives the protocol like a base like value. Like one issue with ETH was always like, should it be worth anything? And the answer is clearly yes now. So I think that was good. I think the merge will be good too because it'll bring down the supply and stuff. But the fluctuations will happen at a higher price rather than not happen. So there's still going to be giant fluctuations in the price.
So these fluctuations will continue even like after the merge. Like let's say like ETH goes to like mid 5 digits. Do you see it like acting the same way even after the merge?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd be curious what you guys think of like, do you see any crypto ever stabilizing out? Like besides stable coins, do you see crypto ever being a market that's like stable if it gets large enough?
I feel like ETH's too complicated to be stable. ETH is like doing too many things to be. It's not that ETH is okay. Let me take that back. I feel like ETH has like a lot of different uses for it to be stable. Bitcoin is just like straight up money. So could it be stable? I feel like people will always be speculating on it. Maybe like over time it will become more stable, but if it's digital gold, then like, I think it won't be like 100% stable. I don't know. What do you think, Kiet? I have to think about it more.
Yeah, I think we should define stable, right?
Yeah, what do you define as stable?
Do you mean like
okay. Let's call the S&P stable. Let's say, the S&P against the dollar is stable, like only 20. And okay, let's just mark it against the dollar because we don't have a choice right now. Some kind of, 20 to 30% band annually against the dollar.
I think so.
I think Bitcoin can do that. Yeah, as it matures over time.
Yeah, I think the majors would kind of graduate into that just because of the nature of the holders. Because it comes down to the least common denominator amongst all the holders, right? If ETH makes its way into the endowment funds and the institutions and the CalPERS and CalSTRS, like, then it kind of acts as if how all the other assets has acted previously in their portfolio, I feel.
Okay.
So you think ETH will stabilize?
Well, I think ETH or BTC, anything because it comes down to who holds it at the end. Like it's not, it kind of dilutes away what it is. It kind of comes into who's holding it at the end of the day. I remember I heard it on the All In pod where Chamath was saying how Facebook is the majority holders of Facebook are all these pension funds and institution funds, and when everything else rallied, Facebook didn't really rally because all those guys took that chance to take profits on Facebook. So even though the fundamentals of the whole market is moving, the holders of this asset is actually the one that really dictates the band that it moves in.
Oh, so you basically think like it's the holders that determine how volatile it will be. So like once like Ethereum and like Bitcoin are just straight up held in pension funds, then like the bands would be smaller.
Yeah, that's my take on it.
That's a good take.
Yeah. What's yours, T?
No, I think that's convincing.
Yeah.
If the holders are going to be pension funds and stuff, and they're not going to sell except in like, to dampen volatility in some way, then why not have a, yeah.
Like
I
my
mean, yeah, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add this, like, I haven't really fleshed this out, but it's just been kind of mulling in my head at the beginning of this year. It's like, you know how there was a whole narrative of corporations adding crypto into their treasury? Well, I think the even more bullish case would be like, corporations adding ETH into their OpEx, as if like, hey, I need to hold ETH for me to pay for gas or pay for anything that I would do on chain
Yeah.
as like an operating expenditure, which isn't like this one-time purchase and be done. It's going to be a continuous flow of buying pressure because, well, it's operating expenditure. They need to operate, so they need to buy it and operate. I think, do you guys ever envision a future where that kind of becomes a thing where corporation has to purchase
Or like
network
DAOs.
tokens or like
Yeah.
utility tokens or DAOs, whatever, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah, no, for sure.
like
I think,
massive
yeah.
entities having to purchase a lot of these tokens just to operate.
Yeah. I definitely see that happening. To be honest, like in terms of like the volatility of like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I don't have too much of an opinion about it because I just like don't know. I can just like guess and speculate. But in terms of like what's like real and like what like is in the immediate future, like yeah, like stuff costs gas on chain, so it makes sense that people would categorize it as an operating expense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, if you're a financial institution and Ethereum is the rails that you're using, then it'll be just like any other commodity that you keep on your balance sheet. You just like if you hedge with oil futures, for
Yeah.
like if you're Southwest Airlines or something, right? You're hedging oil
Yep.
futures all the time to lock in rates. Why not, like, hedge in your ETH futures, like
Yeah,
Right.
hedge in some kind of rate that you can pay, right? So
yeah.
I can see.
And Taro, do you see something I've been thinking about too is like, do you see Bitcoin being used by sovereign nations? I mean, I feel like that's pretty logical. In like the future, like a sovereign nation will accept like, Bitcoin for oil, Bitcoin for cobalt, or Bitcoin for lithium instead of dollars or
Uh,
instead of something else.
yeah, I think how it would go is, yeah, I could see it. I could see it definitely because gold is kind of hard to transport. If you're like the Congo, nobody wants to use your currency. Um, and what does that leave you? You can either be on the dollar, which you probably don't care. You stay on the dollar for as long as you can. And if you get sanctioned or something because of some, human rights abuse or something, or whatever the latest administration decides they want to sanction you on, then you can switch to Bitcoin, which is a lot simpler than gold
Yeah, but
if you want to take that risk. Yeah.
I think like for like major institutions, whether they're sovereign entities or multinational corporations, like in like transacting in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or like you know, or whatever else, like I could see that happening. But for like the everyday person that's like going to buy milk at the grocery store, I don't really see them using Bitcoin or ETH or anything to like buy. I see them using a stable coin or some other type of stable asset. So what's your take on like free floating stable assets, like a post dollar world that like everyday people interact in?
Post-dollar world. All
Yeah.
right, cool. Let's do this. I don't think a post-dollar world exists.
You don't think it will
In
exist?
our lifetimes.
In
Yeah.
our unpopular,
In
because
our
like
lifetime.
I feel like people would love to romanticize that.
Yeah, I mean, what does a post-dollar world means? It means the US loses like military supremacy in the world, right? I'm not a military expert. I'm not going to go off like, pretending I know what I'm talking about, but like I don't see it happening. Like the only case in which you see the dollar being challenged is if both the Chinese get large enough military to like start policing their own area, their population doesn't collapse, they can actually sustain that kind of thing, and they open up their capital accounts, which is like an insanity for the CCP to be like, oh, we're going to be an open currency that anyone can trade. To me, like it sounds like
No,
why
that's
it's
not
not
going to happen. Yeah.
their ethos. So like, what are you left with? You're left with the euro or the dollar. The euro is like I don't know what they're doing. Like, maybe it could collapse, right? Like the euro could collapse in the next 20 years, like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's a possibility. So like that leaves the dollar as like, long-term stability. If you want to buy a 20-year bond, what do you want to buy? You probably want to buy the dollar. So
So you see the dollar is king.
yeah, I'm a believer in there's a dollar milkshake theory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you explain
I'm
what
a
that is
believer in it.
for the
Yeah,
viewers at
dollar
home? Yeah.
milkshake theory. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, okay. So from what I understand of it, dollar milkshake theory is just like if there's some kind of sovereign debt crisis. How does it work exactly? It essentially means the world is short dollars. Like any kind of loans or leverage you take means you're short dollars. So in the case of like, a lot like what happens right now is like you issue a bond and then you roll that bond over because rates are low. So you keep rolling the bonds over and you take new loans out instead of paying back your loans.
Mm-hmm.
If rates go high, like they're about to go right now, let's say interest rates get up to 6%. It's not so attractive to roll that loan over anymore. Okay, so you want to just repay the loan in dollars. What does that mean? You need to go out and buy
Buy
dollars in the
dollars.
market. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of dollar denominated loans in the market. So the idea is that as interest rates go up, like, over the next few years, there's a real crunch of dollars all over the world because everyone does dollar bonds to be, dollar bonds are very common across the world. So you just start seeing the dollar becoming more and more like a wrecking ball, just like taking out emerging countries because it just gets stronger and stronger as it goes.
Why is it the term milkshake? Is it gonna be like a green milkshake?
I don't know. Some guy came up with it. Like,
Oh yeah, that
I don't know
guy.
the origin of the term or
It's
something.
like shaken up or something. Like, oh, it's catchy.
Yeah. I wish, if you guys find someone who can like explain it real well, that'd be cool. I don't actually like, fully understand it. I do understand the world is short dollars. That's kind of my like overall conception of things. Because there's a ton of loans denominated in dollars and like as interest rates go up, it's going to cause problems.
Yeah. It's funny. I kind of view like the spread of currency similar to the spread of languages. It's like right now, like English dominates the world. And like in the same way that dollars dominates the world. And like that's all dependent on like the power at the time that is propagating both. So like in order for like China to like dominate the world, like Chinese will have to like propagate. And like what are the chances of Chinese becoming like the lingua franca in our lifetime? I mean, I think it'll like become like a bigger force, especially with like the whole Belt and Road initiative. But if the yuan still has these type of controls, like I'm not sure, how it could. Who knows? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe like enough countries like are transact with China and like it becomes like wider and wider use the yuan. But like if they have these capital controls, like you said, like could it scale up with? And I'm not sure if it can.
Okay, languages. I think one common misconception on languages is that they're all kind of the same, and like it's just an accident that English is the lingua franca of the world. I think it's not that simple. I think languages compete just like currencies.
No,
do.
that's why I agree. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think like it's funny. Lee Kuan Yew, like the head of Singapore, like during their whole like transformation, he specifically converted the country to English first, not just because the world spoke English, but because that was the primary reason, but also because he said English was like the easiest language for people to learn. Like Chinese is a very difficult language for people to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's got tonalities and stuff like that. So there's a high barrier to Chinese becoming like a lingua franca versus something like English.
Yeah, that's true. And also, like English is the language of computer programming. I'm not sure if that matters, but I guess
Yeah, I mean, a little bit.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's most of the code ends up being like small little worlds. I've seen guys like write comments completely in Russian or something like that, and they're like the only parts of their code that are in English are like the little syntaxes that go like for loop, if, that kind of stuff.
They're literally building their own universes with logic. You love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your macro? Like speaking of like macro, what's your macro outlook for the next like year, 2 years, or few years?
I think we just kind of chop along at these levels for another like year. Maybe some kind of major wipeout at the end of the year if it happens.
Ooh.
But like I'm currently, my net worth is, I was all in Bitcoin all the way up until a week ago. And I sold all of my Bitcoin at like 25K, like on the way up, on the kind of the little pump we had. And I'm all in dollars right now. And my overall macro thesis is just that the dollar is going to be really strong for the next while. I might be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I change my mind on this stuff pretty quickly. So like if I see Bitcoin going up, I'm a pure technical analyst in that sense. Like if I see the number starting to look good, I'll just switch over to Bitcoin. But I don't know. I don't really have a macro thesis outside of like there's not a lot of liquidity in the system. I don't see that changing, so I don't see the number going up anytime soon.
Yeah. So do you kind of separate like the US like into like the dollar like and its dominance like economically and monetarily around the world from like its government? I mean, I might sound like stupid here, but like if like the government seems like there's like a lot of friction, but like the dollar's still like dominating, one would like assume that like both are like should be going up and down the same, but like if one's getting stronger and the other's getting like more friction, like I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I think the dollar, I think it matters. The government matters a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How effective your government is. I think it's though like we complain a lot about our government here, but you have to compare relatively to like governments around the world. And when it comes down to it, the dollar is still better managed than other currencies. Just from like a financial perspective, even if, like what do we argue about here in America? We argue about like guns and we have inflation now because we spent too much. We have a ton of debt and things like that. But I don't think those, I think those problems are probably not as bad as the problems everywhere else in the world
Yeah.
faces. Like
I guess
we have like a big,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, a big thing we have is like we have oil and gas production in the country. So that's always going to, protect us during like really bad times. Europe doesn't have that, so they're gonna suffer a lot in that sense. Russia's always going to be kind of insulated from the world because they have their own oil and gas. China's incredibly dependent on the rest of the world. So like if you're looking at our main competitor, China, we're self-sufficient energy-wise. If we wanted to be, we could be self-sufficient energy-wise. China's very dependent on the outside world for their basic like oil and gas stuff.
But
So
do they have a lot of lithium though?
yeah, but what does lithium gain you, right? Like lithium is nice to build electric cars, but if you don't have oil, like what do you do? Like electric cars aren't gonna take over the world. There's not enough lithium, first of all, to even like build enough electric cars to like run all of China. But also like, it's a secondary thing to me. Like oil and gas to me is like the basis of what the world runs on. I don't see how that changes anytime soon.
Do you see?
And I don't think China has access to that.
Do you see like any alternatives like nuclear coming about, like really taking
Yeah, if we
over?
have the political will to do it, then yeah, we could make nuclear kind of work. But barring that, like China's going really hard on nuclear is what I've heard.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll make it work for that.
I think Japan just announced they're building a new nuclear plant as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be cool if like one day the whole world's on chain and we can trade like oil and gas futures on Zigzag. That would be
Yeah.
yeah, in a completely decentralized way.
Yeah. That'd be the ideal.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we get to it.
And so speaking of that, I want to ask you, what does success look like for Zigzag to you?
The protocol generates fees and gets a lot of volume. Just if people use the product, I'm happy. And it's decentralized in the long run.
Do you have a number, like a total number of fees generated lifetime, total number of average volume, and any kind of
As users like
like-
are ranking.
is there like a metric that you just kind of yearn for?
Yeah, today in my head, I see like Uniswap on Arbitrum, and I'm like, they do $40 million a day. Okay, so if we do $40 million a day, then we're doing pretty good.
Okay.
That's no go for. We're at 2 million right now on Arbitrum, so we got a ways to go.
Oh, you mean like Uniswap does 40 million on Arbitrum a day?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Baby steps. Baby steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
The march to
Yeah.
40 million begins. Okay.
Yeah. What is your biggest critique of DeFi right now? Did we go over it before? Like, what would you say is the biggest critique of DeFi in general?
Biggest critique of DeFi. That a lot of this doesn't apply to everyone, but a lot of the financial models are like just flawed in DeFi. Like my favorite one recently was who were the guys that were lending out like money against like NFTs or something?
Bend?
I don't
Bend,
know.
yeah, Bend, right. So like they had a bunch of liquidations and like nobody bought them or something, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it was either way. Like it might have worked out that one time, but like it says literally in their like technical docs. They're like, okay, so like, what happens if a loan goes bad? Oh, don't worry, the price will go back up. That's literally the answer in their docs.
It
And
will
it's
go
like,
back up.
actually, no. The price might not go back up. Then what? Oh, okay, the protocol's screwed. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Um, Dave, are you ready to wrap, or do you have a couple more questions on your end?
I have one more question. I'm still one more thing. I'm still like really fascinated with the fact that like you're at the edge of DeFi, like ZKSync, like learning Cairo and shit, and also like own Bitcoin and Bitcoin. You're like a Bitcoin, not like a maximalist, but kind of like a fundamentalist in a sense, but like are still open to other things. Like, what is your response to like ETH maximalists out there that's just like everything like has to be in ETH? Like ETH is the future, ETH is this and that.
I think ETH maximalism is like the most retarded form of maximalism. Like Bitcoin maximalism, I kind of get. All right, there's a money, and you're saying that the financials, DeFi is just all bogus. Okay, that's like, it's a position, even if it's not one I agree with. ETH maximalism is saying DeFi exists. For some reason, Bitcoin is worth nothing. But like DeFi exists, and no other chain will ever be like Ethereum. Well, why not? Like, why isn't Solana useful? Why doesn't Cosmos have a place in the world? Like, if you're saying DeFi exists, at that point, you're also admitting other other L1s could also exist. That I don't get that one. Like, ETH maximalism to me is like the worst form of maximalism.
Yeah, I guess like the response for that would be like, what's the point of other chains? We can just have a roll up and just have the chain as a roll up and have the security on ETH.
Well, that's kind of like, Bitcoin maxis in 2013 be like, well, why do you need Ethereum? You just, roll it up onto Bitcoin or whatever, do DeFi on Bitcoin. But also like L2s there is a security trade-off on an L2. All that money gets stored into a smart contract, and there's a chance that that smart contract does not have good code. L2s aren't magic, there's a bridge in an L2 also in a smart contract, and that smart contract could get hacked. So that, there's a lot of people who are very hesitant to move their money to L2s because of that.
Yeah.
So as long as there's limited block space in Ethereum, there's going to be like demand for block space in other chains as well, I think.
And what's your take on because there's like an effort for Bitcoin on DeFi, like there's stacks and there's other things. Like, do you think that should just be like thrown away altogether and like Bitcoin should just like become this like conservative position of like we're just money, if you want like a safe place to like store your value, here it is. Like, what's your take on Bitcoin on DeFi and stuff like that? Like, can there be like a ZK? Also, I heard things like ZK, like you have a ZK roll up on Bitcoin. I don't know if or they were talking about something about ZK and Bitcoin. I'm not sure, but what's your take on Bitcoin and DeFi and like possible like if they're hypothetically, if you could have roll ups on Bitcoin, where would your take be on that?
I think you should never modify Bitcoin to make it like Ethereum, where there's a ton of like transactions that use up like block space that aren't just regular transfers and stuff like that. But if you did something like a ZK rollup where it was just a commitment once every few hours, and it was really minimal, and it was able to like resolve to the main Bitcoin chain somehow, that sounds kind of viable to me.
Interesting.
I don't see why you couldn't do that. Yeah. But also, like, you'd have to get Bitcoin to agree to, like, a lot of the problems with this stuff is like you have to modify the Bitcoin based protocol in order to do it, which is like a years long affair. So it's just like, why even bother when like it's experimental tech and you need to like iterate on it really quickly? Why
It's like
even bother when you could,
it's not meant to.
do it on Ethereum instead, right?
Yeah. Like Bitcoin and Ethereum basically exist in this yin and yang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Kiet, I say we're ready to wrap up.
Alrighty. So, T, normally at the end of these things, we do a round of rapid fire questions. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna hit you with the first one. When did you first touch the chain? And sex don't count.
Touch the chain.
Yeah.
Which chain? Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Your virgin crypto experience.
First time I touched the chain, I sent a Bitcoin transaction in like 2017. Yeah. That was the first time I touched the chain.
Wait, What about? I thought you said you were like developing and coding in like 2016, or were you?
2016?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never touched the chain on any of those stuff. I had all my money on Coinbase until like January of 2017.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Next question. So, what do you like to do off chain? Like, what do you like to do when you're not coding?
Uh, Work out, play frisbee, um, go for walks, runs. Yeah, eat food. All the
Just
normal stuff.
be a human.
Touch grass.
Touch grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. If you weren't in crypto, what would you be doing?
professionally.
Ooh. I think I'd be in robotics because that's what I was in before crypto. But I would like to be in energy. That seems to be like the place to be for the next 20 years.
Okay. I'm curious, what kind of robotics? Like,
I was working on like an indoor mapping system. So like it's a robot that runs around like maps internal warehouses so you can start doing like automated like inventory management.
wow. Okay.
What's your favorite food? What's your favorite cuisine?
Indian food.
Coffee or tea?
Neither. I don't drink caffeine.
Oh,
No, Monster, no energy drinks, none of that.
No. Just sleep like 10 hours a day instead.
what is some advice you'd give to your younger self?
Start a company earlier. Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Yeah. You'll screw up the first one, so you might as well get it over with.
It's really
Cool.
good advice.
And the last question, is there anything that you want the viewers to know about Zigzag?
It's got the best prices on Arbitrum. For ETH and BTC. So if you really care about price execution, you should come to Zigzag.
Yeah. And where can people find you and Zigzag online?
My Twitter is Zigzag Exchange for us, and the website is trade.zigzag.exchange. And then my personal Twitter is Taureau_21.
Nice. 21. I see why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Taureau, it's been an awesome conversation. I definitely feel smarter from it. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have you on next time. And excited to see where Zigzag goes.
Cool, guys. Thanks for
Thanks,
having me
man.
on.
Appreciate
Thanks.
you. Thanks.
See ya.
Hey everyone, that was this week's edition of Flywheel with Taureau, the founder of Zigzag Exchange. And Kiet, do you have any final thoughts from this week's episode?
Man, I'm super excited to see, T on his march to 40 million in volume.
March to 40 million.
The march to 40 million. I can't wait to have him back on for that. I think it's a milestone to celebrate.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see how Zigzag evolves because he is operating from a principle is like, okay, let's make this as decentralized as possible.
Yeah.
And he's a full stack decentralized person, not just like in DAOs and governance, but he views decentralization primarily in a technical way, which I think a lot of people should think more of.
Yeah, I think folks should go back and re-listen to that part and really, because not a lot of people here are technical. I think it's very critical for us to
Yeah.
understand that technical decentralization is also as important as governance decentralization.
Yeah, and I feel like when liquidity is looking for a place on L2s, especially Arbitrum, like Zigzag is going to be one of the main venues for it to go to.
Right. And also for the devs out there, the alpha is to go for the hardest language so that you can monopolize and be early, as we learned from
Yeah.
T.
Yeah, don't be afraid to challenge yourselves. Yeah, well, that's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on our podcast socials like Spotify, like Apple. You can follow us on Twitter at FlywheelPod. Join our Telegram group at FlywheelPod. Follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave 22.
You can follow me at 0x_K.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.